Ready? Is this, are all of these chairs going to be used, including yourself? Okay, so we don't need that one. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so just let's check. You just try and make sure don't walk in front of him and that's what we like.
How are you?
No, pero eso está muy la España. Got your message right away. Just now, in the answers, yes, thank you very much. Just email me or give me an address, I call them. Perfect, yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much for
Excuse me, I'm
Yes, Steve. I have no idea. Is it going out live?
Yeah, we're booking it because we're told that it's going to start at 9. So, yeah, probably. Well, there's a lot of background noise. Once it started with the network fire, I would use that.
They go to sleep.
How you doing? Hi, sorry, we're not allowed to put more chairs in here. Yeah, tired of our office. We're gonna get in trouble. So I'm supposed to make it. Yes. Do you, so this is
That's why we have to say first.
I already did my job of
Sorry, no.
I have one for myself, one I need to keep it, then they don't believe me. But the other ones, I tried the best, but I think we needed more convincing power. So those that are already alive, no. I don't know if we're already there for a positive vote, but we're at least one step behind.
How are you? Good. Oh, there you are. I was like, yeah. Are you okay? Are you doing all right? I'm gonna I'll put chairs there next to my phone. I was just gonna say for some reason, is that okay? 17. Perfect. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that was the idea. You will see it today. Understood. No, no. He is getting better. By the day. That was the idea. Oh. Yeah. Hey, morning. How are you? That's what they're working on as well. Find the narrative.
Oh, you want to sit here? Okay. Okay, sure.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Excellent. Thank you. My name is Betsy Apple. Can you see me? I'm very short, you know. Sorry, I would stand, but I was instructed not to stand there. So if I stand, I'm afraid I won't have the microphone, and I think probably we need, although I'm very loud. Should we try it?
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Excellent. My name is Betsy Apple, and I'm the Advocacy Director for the Open Society Justice Initiative. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
This is a key element of advocacy, projection. Being able to project one's voice and speak very loudly when necessary. I want to first welcome you all to the Open Society Foundations. Welcome, and thank you for making your way all the way across town. We are deeply inconveniently located to the UN. And I know that it's difficult to trek across town, and often diplomats refuse to do it. So this is yet another way that civil society is superior to states. You're willing to travel across town. I want to just I'm only going to talk for 15 or 20 minutes, so no need to worry. I'll be very brief. I wanted to welcome you all and say it's tremendous to see you all here. I understand 500 people registered for this conversation, which is extraordinary. And I'm so sorry, I see people sitting on the floor and perched. I'm sorry that there are a few seats up front. People should feel free to come and take them. I'm sorry that we don't have seats for everyone, but I've been told that the fire marshals come and check on us on a weekly basis, because apparently we are repeat offenders and having meetings that are too large. So I'm afraid that we're not permitted to put any more chairs in. So thanks for your willingness to be a little bit uncomfortable for this important cause. I'm just going to talk for a second about what OSF, Open Society Foundations, has done with respect to the formerly known as the post-2015 development agenda, now known as the 2030 agenda, and then just make a couple of remarks about what I think is, I hope will be important for us to keep in mind this morning. OSF, Open Society Foundations, has been advocating now for several years, even before the high-level panel issued its report, for the inclusion of basically a human rights frame in the new Sustainable Development Agenda. We've been advocating for the inclusion of justice, rule of law, good governance, and public security. And we have done so in many different ways. But suffice it to say, we're very happy about Goal 16, as I'm sure many of you are, as well as other parts of the agenda that we think really reflect a shift in the way we think about development. Now we think about development as intermarried with human rights, and that's extremely important. I want to just mention 4 things that I think are really helpful about the SDGs, and 4 things that I think are slightly worrisome. And I hope we'll talk about these today. One good thing is that they're universal and they're holistic. As someone said in a meeting where I was the other day, we are all developing countries now. And that is true. Every country, including my country of origin, the United States, has a lot of work to do to actually achieve the SDGs. And it's very important that we get that acknowledgement from them early on. I think another good thing I mentioned is that the SDGs are rooted in human rights. We now recognize that for us, for example, justice is indispensable to sustainable development. Without justice, you will not have sustainable development, and that's a paradigm shift. I think another potentially positive thing is the role of the private sector. People have talked about the crucial importance of multi-stakeholder initiatives and that the role that the private sector must play, and that has potential to be very helpful given the limited resources of many governments. Finally, I think it's important to acknowledge that this indicators debate, conversation, how do we measure progress, really opens up many opportunities for crucial civil society engagement, and we have to seize those opportunities. Now, what are the 4 perils or challenges that I'm worried about? In fact, they're precisely the same things that I just said. The agenda is universal and holistic. That's great in many ways, but I think it creates potential for many governments which are not going to be able to implement every goal and every aspect of the agenda equally at the same time. It will create prioritization, and we have to be careful about that and watch that. The SDGs are rooted in a human rights framework. On the one hand, that's a very good thing, I think we can all acknowledge. On the other, it makes me wonder about what that says about our engagement with states. From a human rights framework, we tend to view ourselves in opposition to states. In my organization, the Open Society Justice Initiative, we sue states, the ultimate in opposition, one might say. How are we going to make a shift so that we can reconceptualize partnership in a way where we work together while also holding states accountable? The private sector has an important role to play, good, but also worrying. I think we have to watch out potentially for private sector capture of sustainable development. We have to be vigilant about that. And finally, the indicators present critical opportunities for civil society engagement. Good, that's excellent. We need to engage, we need to seize that opportunity, but we also need to be careful that we don't become obsessed with measurement, particularly in a traditional way. I was at an event the other night with Amartya Sen, and he was talking about the limitations of conventional measurement, and he said, just because you can't measure something conventionally doesn't mean it didn't happen. And the example he used was, cancel the French Revolution. It wasn't measured. So I think we have to be really careful that we're creative, we're clever, and we don't fall into the measurement trap. As civil society, I think we've got to figure out how to coordinate ourselves, but I think we've also got to acknowledge that we cannot coordinate everything. So we have to identify key moments, key places to where we need to coordinate. And I'm very much looking forward to doing that with you today. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to an excellent event.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Arelis Bellorini, and I am from World Vision. Many of you know me because I'm based in the World Vision's office here in New York, and I've been leading our work on post-2015 here in New York together with an important team within World Vision.
Hello, everybody. Morning. Yeah, I'm Ibrahim Sise. I'm from the African Unity on Climate Change. I'm also a reference group member of Action 2015, and we are going to be your facilitators for today's event.
Yes, I think you must have guessed that we are going to be the facilitators. Thank you for being here. This is a very happy moment for us. I think this is a moment where we celebrate, and I would say we celebrate briefly because we have a lot of work to do. This is a side event within the context of all the events that have been taking place. We have announced this event as a civil society meeting and what happens after September 23. But I think we all know the answer to that. What happens is that we continue to advocate, we continue to mobilize, we continue to seek to influence, we continue to monitor and hold people accountable, governments accountable, including ourselves. And the first thing that happens is that we need this agenda to deliver, and we are going to make sure of that. Are we going to make sure that this agenda truly delivers for the people? Can I hear yes? Yes. Can I hear a stronger yes? Yes. Thank you. Now I'm excited. Very briefly, we have an agenda. I hope you have received it over the email. Unfortunately, we did not print it. But basically, we have a fantastic panel. As we say in Spanish, un panel de lujo. Un panel de lujo. That is what we have today to start in this conversation and launch us into the conversation this morning. Right after the panel, we have a presentation from some of our colleagues who have been participating in a conversation that started November last year in one of the many events that we had as civil society to coordinate and to join up on advocacy and mobilization. After that presentation, we also have a session of breakout groups where we get to provide more inputs, to exchange, to brainstorm, to pick each other's brain as to what are the specific things that we will be doing, that we see that need to be done, and that we may want to do it together. And so on. We have also a small presentation, and then we wrap up. So we started a little bit late, so I will move on very quickly to the panel. And so please join me welcoming our colleague Leo Williams from Beyond 2015. Chantal Moonwright from the reference team of the Action 2015. John Patrick from the Africa Working Group of Post 2015. And last but never least, our friend and colleague, Danny. And please, Danny, I'm going to need to mention your last name. We all know you by Danny, so. Thank you so much. I also want to welcome our colleagues who are online. This event is being live streamed, and we can see it right here from where we are sitting. So I hope that you will not be right in the middle, so that our colleagues can keep a watch. On the panel. And we also have a hashtag, and you can see it to your right, CSO 2030. So we'll be also monitoring the Twitter to see whether we are able to respond some of the questions of that are online. And for some reason, I think it's early morning, I haven't had my second coffee of the day. I admitted Claudio, our good friend from Brazil. He's a policy advisor for Avon, for Gestos Avon. So Claudio, please join us.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introductions. Just to mention that today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be coming up with a CEO strategy for the next level after executive design. I mean CEO, I'm not talking about the chief executive officers, of course not. I'm talking about C standing for communication. How do we communicate these new goals, global goals to our constituency and citizens? E stands for engaging. How do we engage society at all levels, national, regional, international, global? And O, how do we organize as civil society to make sure we hold government accountable? Having said that, I now want to welcome the first speaker. And please, we're going to be a little brutal with time. So you have between 3 to 5 minutes to make your presentation. And we'll start with Mr. Leo Williams. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. I'll try to keep within the time, just shout at me if I don't. So I'm Leo Williams, I'm the International Coordinator of Beyond 2015. Normally, I think what gives the force of speaking on behalf of Beyond 2015 is the fact that we have 1,500 organisations throughout the world. But I think today I've really been asked to speak about my personal experiences within Beyond 2015 from starting with the campaign back in 2010 until today, and to try and give some thoughts on the structure of the campaign and how things worked back when we were setting it up, just to provide some thinking and some feedback. So I'll maybe provide just 3 kind of key questions, which I think it's really important to bear in mind when people are at this kind of level, and maybe try and provide some reflections or key thinking from the campaign. So the first one then is the question around leadership versus inclusivity, participation, and ownership. I think it's really difficult to figure out how to get this question right. How do you ensure that you have a broad-based campaign with a wide membership while ensuring that key decisions are taken and that the work progresses? This has always been a challenge within Beyond 2015, and I imagine that it's a challenge in the majority of global campaigns. And I think my strong sense is that leadership is really crucial in the initial stages of the campaign, which I think is where we are. The principal role of these leaders is to be inclusive and to ensure participation and ownership, because I think without this inclusivity, any global campaign will just be an empty shell. So I think the key learning that I've taken from Beyond is that it's about how you lead as well. Beyond 2015 had a centralized model of executive committee leadership, but then very decentralized structures at the regional level, the national level, who all had a lot of freedom to be decisions to do position X, Y, and Z when they needed. I think it's really important for a fledgling campaign to realise that the strength of a campaign really lies both in the ownership and the participation of its members, as well as in the strength and the commitment of its leaders as well. So I urge you guys not to forget that. The second key question, I think, is the national level focus. Now, we hear this time and time again, that the focus now needs to pass to the national level. Frankly, I'm always quite surprised to hear that, because I think we have focused a lot on the national level over the last 5 years, realising that to influence an international process, if you don't have a focus on the national level, you're simply not going to be able to influence. So it's clearly that the international level doesn't move without the national level. So I think we would really urge the new campaign to follow up with that national level focus, but maybe to try and build on the experience that we had. But a couple of key learnings that we have from this within Beyond is maybe 3 refronts here. So firstly, who? This is a challenge I think you guys really need to not underestimate. There's a variety of kind of global campaigns and movements, many of whom have different leadership at the national level as well. Some have there's a lot of overlap between various campaigns and networks, but there are differences. I think it's really incumbent on civil society to recognise that there are these differences. And at some point in the formation of a new campaign like this, it's going to be important for any processes that are put in place to be very clear, transparent, and that they have the trust of civil society at the national level as well. The second key learning that I've taken is around money. It's really difficult to ensure full participation in global campaigns at the national level if there aren't extra resources provided by a central pot in a sustainable way. We've heard this time and time again from our national lead agencies throughout the campaign, and we saw that things only really took off when we managed to secure sustainable funding over a 2.5-3 year period. Frankly, I don't think Beyond 2015 ever managed to provide enough. We aim to provide 25,000 euros per year per country, and I think only ever managed to provide around half that. So I guess I would issue a challenge to whatever next campaign forms that please try and ensure that enough financial flows are able to move to the national level. And I think my final key learning on this point is around replicating inclusivity at the national level, especially with this new agenda. How a traditional development actor is going to fully and meaningfully engage with more nationally focused CSOs and really to ensure inclusivity and participatory leadership at the national levels as well. Again, it's a challenge I don't think we ever really got we ever really got right enough within Beyond 2015, but I think there's an opportunity to do more so now. And finally, campaign structure. Not sexy, not exciting, but absolutely crucial. Without a clear and well-thought structure with clear roles, clear responsibilities, clear terms of reference, people who are kind of outside of that inner circle just will drop off because it won't be clear to them what you were doing, and understandably so. So I think I would say that you guys need to decide what the structures of this campaign is going to be. Is it regional coordinators? Is it hubs? Is it lead agencies? Is it global assemblies? Is it thematic groups? These decisions need to be taken. And I think it will really set the tone of the campaign and the work over the next 15 years. So I'd really urge people to really think through these decisions and to take them quickly. I think a few key learnings here. So firstly is that it's really important to take considered decisions, to stick to those decisions, and then to move on. You can't be continually talking about the structure for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You'll be banking decisions and moving on. I think the second key learning is really not to underestimate the importance of big decisions and not to take them off. Things around, is it a campaign or is it an organization, who's a fiscal agent, all this kind of stuff. They're important conversations, they're important decisions, and they're difficult. But the longer you put them off, the harder it will be to move forward. Third key learning that we had from Beyond 2015 was around the separation of powers, if you like, in kind of national level ego. You have parliaments and governments. If you're talking about campaign structures, what worked well within Beyond 2015 was to separate the powers between the fiscal agent and the political leadership. So who controls the money shouldn't control the politics as well. We had a really clear division of power, if you like, between the finance and the politics within the campaign, and that's a really key learning for me that I would encourage any future campaign to really think about. And I think finally, you just need to be really clear on the structures with everybody. We found within Beyond 2015, if your thinking internally and within the kind of internal leadership group isn't exceedingly clear, it won't be for anybody else, and they'll find it really hard to engage. So I would just encourage you guys at the leadership level to know exactly what you want to do and to be extremely clear when communicating that to everybody else. Okay, I think that's maybe the key learnings I have to share.
Thank you so much, Leo, for reminding us some of the key learnings that you have outlined. I'm sure that this will be taken into account very dearly. Many of the organizations present here are a member of Beyond 2015. Beyond 2015 is a campaign that has been going on for almost 5 years. And I would say it is the longest campaign that has been 1,200 organizations that have joined. Strong advocacy, great influencing in the global level, and it is no coincidence that we have included Beyond 2015 in this panel. It is no coincidence either that we have included Action 2015, who, although doesn't have a year, but the strength that it has brought and the energy and the massive mobilization underscores the importance of both advocacy and mobilization in this context. So I would like to call them to Chantal. to share the experience of Action 2015. Again, some of our organizations are members of both Beyond 2015 and Action 2015. We're happy to hear the experience from Action 2015. Over to you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
A lot of the lessons learned that I will bring really coalesce with what Leo has said. And what I will do is to just briefly speak to some slides, but really concentrate on those one or two at the end that really kind of draw and bring those lessons learned. So again, I think everybody's fairly familiar with the Action 2015 campaign, but just for us to kind of reinforce who the campaign was and what we did, etc. So it's a movement of more than 2,000 member organizations operating in 150 countries, with more than 80% located in the Global South. And as you see, we kind of highlighted that really there for you, that focus on a campaign that was very much grounded in the Global South. So we're really talking about a level of ownership of the campaign in the Global South. And again, as you can see from the slides, in terms of the kind of constituencies that we were able to bring together, so that was about bringing grassroots people as well. I think one of the kind of big wins for this campaign is that we were actually able to come together climate, environmental, human rights, and development groups that previously didn't want to speak to each other for whatever reasons. And the Action 2015 campaign was able to really coalesce that grouping. Far-reaching geographical reach. And I think as well, I think everybody here would agree that that was really one of the kind of key strengths of the Action 2015 campaign. Campaigning for instance in my region in the Caribbean was extremely new. And this campaign was able to kind of really kind of spread the message. And hardest to reach in most marginalized populations as well. I remember in one of the reflections, we were talking about the fact, that we were able to mobilize, it was 4,000 people in Ethiopia, to really come out. And again, as part of the great process. So you had mobilizations in places that previously would have been difficult to mobilize. And of course, the diversity in terms of the ages as well. How we help to kind of achieve change. The campaign was built on some kind of key principles. One, inclusivity, which again was something that Leo mentioned, open to anyone that supported the campaign vision, like touch, no centralized sign-off process or heavy decision-making structure or activities. And this was extremely important. I think this was kind of one of the really kind of coalescing factors. It really kind of had to struggle through as a campaign, that kind of balance between the level of centralization. And I think we all agree that having a light touch approach really worked for us. And open source and enabling. So again, as I will demonstrate, you will see that one of the kinds of key elements of ownership in this campaign was that people, we developed some global signifiers, but then people had the ability to change and work with those and to be able to fit them into their own context as well. And again, in terms of structure, I thought it was important that we kind of reflected on this. And again, as Leo said, not to kind of, make sure that we understand really and truly what it needs in order to have a campaign of this kind of magnitude. So we had an assembly, and the assembly was made up of all the participating organizations, and it was the main kind of decision-making body for the campaign. And again, that's important in terms of inclusivity and participation being open to everyone there. We had a reference group that was an advisory group, and that helped to coordinate and work through the Global Hub. There, as you can see, which was the main kind of coordinating mechanism, and then these action teams. And these action teams, for me, is really where the work took place. We had over 12 action teams, we had regional coordinators, and as well at the national level, all of the coordinating teams again. So extremely decentralized, again, encouraging ownership in the process. Very quickly, because I know my time is running out, and I really do want to focus on those kind of lessons learned. Again, as you can see for yourself in terms of what that meant in terms of what we were able to achieve. And here I do want to emphasize that one of the kind of critical success factors for me was the fact that we were able to get such high level support for the campaign. Again, from a wide range of global leaders as well. And secondly, most importantly here, is that while the focus, yes, was on the SDGs, the campaign will also be focusing on climate change, and we're already going to be mobilizing around the 29th of November. So let's look at some of the lessons, the kind of key lessons. I think, as I said before, one of the kind of key benefits of this campaign was the decentralized nature of the campaign and the open source materials. And as well, and as you can see for yourself, I mean, if you can look at how people have used the signifiers that were kind of developed in languages and regions, etc. And as well as we said before, the strength of working across different organizations and being able to bring those organizations together. The importance of working jointly on advocacy and mobilization. I remember this was a kind of a key tension for that campaign in terms of the advocacy and those kinds of trade-offs that have to be made. And one of the things that the campaign was able to do was to strike a good enough balance between the advocacy and the campaign elements so that we can all kind of work together and be able to leverage the strength. The challenges of creating and negotiating messages, and any of you who've been to any of the Action 2015 assemblies would know that this is the one that got us in, into some kind of difficult waters. And I really think it's important for us to really kind of understand that, and again, not to underestimate it as well. Deliberate approach to encourage inclusion, and I really want to emphasize this. I think one of the strengths of this campaign was that we had to take a very deliberate approach to make sure that we brought those missing voices. So it was very early looking at who was missing from the table, whether it was faith, whether it was trade unions, whether it was women, and kind of thinking through very carefully about how do we make sure that we get those voices to the table. And I think that's important. The willingness to bring along constituencies that were newly engaged in campaigning with the SDGs. So this wasn't about a process of people who already knew what was happening and who, already had it all together, but it was really a campaign that said, come along and we'll work with you. And I think that's important as well. And again, like I said, we had high-level support for the campaign and its objectives. And I think the next point here about the need to secure a minimum capacity really strengthens the points, it reinforces the points that Leo made in terms of fundraising. And one of the things that we need to be careful of is that we don't have a process, whatever we will call it, that it's about organizations that are able to leverage large pools of resources and we therefore create an imbalance in the process about those organizations that can mobilize those resources and the rest of the people who can't. And I think that's really, really important that we think about how do we do that in a way that's going to be equitable and fair and inclusive as well. And finally as well, I think we just want to say that, the Action 2015 campaign has really ended on a high and with a clear commitment from partners and coalitions to implement the SDGs. And really we believe now that it's important for us to move on and make sure that we define the mechanism going forward. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Chantal, for your presentation. I think both presentations is a clear indication of what it means to have a CEO strategy for a campaign on post-2015. Having said that, we all know that Africa is a continent of extreme wealth and extreme poverty, but the new Global Goals presents a great opportunity for us to develop as a continent. And it's my singular honor to invite Mr. John Patrick from the Africa Working Group to give his own experience on how they organize on post-2015 in Africa. Whilst we're discussing Agenda 2030, in Africa we already have Agenda 2063.
Yeah, thank you for switching off the computer because I belong to the oral tradition. Like my predecessor, I want also to say good morning, my dear brothers and sisters.
Good morning.
I'm not tired, I'm not weighed down, but the thinking sometimes can weigh someone down. Some of you might have known my name as John Patrick or John Patrick Singh Roy. But there is another name you do not know, and I want to give it to you today. The missing name is Grantee. That's the missing name, John Patrick Ngoy Grantee. in my 2.5 decades of involvement in development work, I received a lot of grants. But the best grant I've ever received, is the one I received from Beyond 2015. It was not money. I've been on the board of the executive committee of Beyond 2015 for 4 good years. For 4 good years, I was in the kitchen with them. The kitchen where the menu of food was being designed. I was no longer just invited to come and eat what someone had designed and invited to the table. Whether I designed the menu or not, at least I saw how the menu was being designed. And I have enjoyed it so much. Brothers and sisters, I can guarantee you, I'm not ready to let go. I want to remain in the kitchen. I want to become a real designer of menus. I don't want to be invited when everything has been decided any longer. And that's why I say the greatest grant I've ever received was not the thousands, the hundreds of euro or pounds. It is that level of participation, knowing that where the global agenda of development was being designed, I was part of it. And that's what SDGs have brought to me. That kind of hope. That kind of hope that I am now involved. My people are involved. But when I look around, say I've refused to prepare big notes, big presentation. When I look around, then you can do the same exercise with me. But for most of us here, SDG is a continuation of MDGs, being the target continent is Africa. I hate to see that continued. Because I know in my heart, in my flesh, what it means to be continuously told what is good for myself and for my people. And my fear is, when I look around, the first speaker spoke about shifting. Are we ready to shift? Are the SDGs also part of the agenda of the northern NGOs? Or are the SDGs still targeting the poor Africans and some of them who live in Asia and Latin America? Will SDG challenge the NGOs in the north to focus on what the government in the north are actually doing? Will SDG mean challenging the government of the United States of Britain that the mode of production and consumption is not only harming Africans, is also harming American and British? Dear friends, I think the greatest lessons I've learned from being part of this struggle is that we are now all developing countries. The concept of development has to change in our minds. Development is no longer that action that will be targeting the poor. We are all poor, we have to change, because this model of development cannot go on. And I don't want Africans, Asians, to imitate this model of development. This is not where we need to be. I think while we are reflecting on the future of this global movement beyond 2015, Action 2015, GCAP, we need to come back to terms with this new development, these new challenges to all of us, that this world belongs to all of us. And we have to think collectively where we want to go by challenging ourselves. What is the best aid we need to get now? I don't think 0.7% is the business. No, I rate it, I denounce it, I challenge it, I invite us to abandon it. The real challenge we have, the real aid we need, the best aid that can come to Africa is by changing the policies within developed countries. If we change the approaches, if we change the policies within developed countries, then it will change all over the world. I want to invite us to think twice, to refocus, to shift our mindset. And by so doing, the solidarity will become all the more stronger. By so doing, we become the prophet for our time. By so doing, the SDG will become universal, applicable not only in Africa, but also in America, in Britain, in the Caribbean island, in Chile, in Congo, in Nigeria, in Benin. Civil society taking the leadership, the private sector will follow, and the government all over the world will listen. Thank you for the time given.
Thank you so much, John Patrick, for such inspiring words and for really calling on us to look at some of the principles that we should keep in mind when moving forward and we're going next. So let me now call on Claudio Fernandez from Gestos Avon to share the experience from Latin America and the Caribbean on this process of post-2015 now Agenda 2030.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks to the invitation to come here. Actually, I'm substituting. Oh, what's the part? Okay. Okay, better. So I'm actually substituting for Alessandra Neal, the coordinator of Justice. She was not able to be here because she's in a home day meeting in the Island Task Force for the CBD. So I will give you a little bit of her remarks. First thing is about the agenda itself. So we in Brazil, both part of a working group on post-2015 agenda and a coalition of NGOs, which is my NGO, Justice, is part of, which is the Brazilian Association of NGOs, have evaluated that the overall result of the SDGs and both the FFT conference is somewhat reductionist in the area of rights. Despite all the good intentions, there are a few things that is quite complicated, especially on the financing for development track of that agenda. Nevertheless, it is the agenda that we have. It is a script that if we may follow, there will be quite a bit of advance in development and a new type of development. A development that, as John Patrick Grantee just spoke about, that needs to change the mindset. Because to do business as usual, you know, this is a cliche, but coming here to New York and participating in these meetings and the UN deliberations and negotiations, many times we come out somewhat frustrated because we come with a lot of hope and then we end up leaving with our hope watered down. And then we end up with being, oh my God, is that going to be business as usual again? Are we going to be able to change the pattern of production and consumption in the world? So actually we can have a sustainable development that is not going to increase deforestation, raise emissions, you know, go against exactly the objectives that have been discussed and negotiated throughout this past 3 years. It's a question, and we as civil society have a lot of responsibilities in making sure that what happens from now on is extremely positive and in the right direction. A little bit of experience in Brazil. ABONG is also part of the Beyond 2015. It's the National Hub of the Beyond 2015 campaign. And we have worked closely for the past mostly 3 years, intensifying as we come close to the final moments of both the FFT and the SDGs negotiations. And we have tried to gather as many organizations associated to ABONG as possible, so we could actually share the knowledge, share the perspectives that we are having, and also to make most especially grassroots NGOs, aware of the SDGs agenda. Because many times people would go, this is just a UN discussion, what do we have to do with that? How's that going to change my life? Especially in the grassroots area. And we say, okay, it's a script that it might change your life if we all work together, if we come together and start doing one of the most important parts of the work that we have been doing in Brazil until this point, which has been advocacy. Advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. We have tried a lot. We have articulated with government. We have articulated with civil society. I have to admit that we have not articulated as much with the private sector, especially because private sector is this very strange notion because it puts transnational corporations close to like medium and small enterprises. And in Brazil, this is somewhat complicated to actually bring everybody on the table, especially in the moment of economic crisis that we have been doing in country for a while. But the advocacy with the government and the articulation with the government has worked quite well in a way. We had some opening from the Secretariat of the Governance of the country, and we did participate as part of the official delegation, for instance, in both the FFD and the SDG negotiation processes. And we were able to influence some of that processes, including, for instance, the inclusion of people living with HIV in the wee hours of the final SDGs negotiation. I have to say that this was specifically something that Alessandra Gulo had really advocated with the Brazilian delegation, and the Brazilian delegation pushed that forward. So now what's next? Okay, next for the implementation, we cannot lose the advocacy element of it. We definitely need to keep on doing the advocacy, and now we actually have a script for that advocacy, which is the document itself. So the document can be utilized for monitoring, for doing the follow-up, and for doing part of the implementation in the national level. But when we talk on the national level, we have to be aware that actually for the SDGs to work, we have to go beyond the national level, we have to go to the local level, because things actually happen in the local level, the territories. And once we talk, as Chantal said, for instance, about reaching the most vulnerable populations in a country like Brazil, it's quite extended. There's a lot of vulnerable population that lives far away from urban centers, and it's very difficult to reach. That's a challenge that we have to meet. And we need to articulate very well both with governments and strengthen our articulation with the private sector as well in the process of being a partner in that process. A partner that can contribute with positive influence, and also a partner that can call attention to the negatives that can come out in that process. And for that, for the advocacy to keep going, we definitely need funds, as we will put to very well and Chantal as well. Resource is extremely necessary for giving incentives, especially for grassroots organizations that sometimes don't have it very clear how can an international agenda, a holistic, universal agenda, can actually change their daily life. Organization for that to happen. So civil society is not seen only as a service provider for the implementation, as sometimes some governments and some people think, but also a partner of that process. As Mr. John Patrick put, we want to be designing the menu. We don't want to be in the menu. We want to be designing the menu. We want to be on the table of negotiations. We want to be consulted. We want to be in the process of implementation from beginning to end. And not only like rubber stamping something that has already been decided in government level. Some of the challenges for that, expanding the civil society coalition in Brazil. We have, as I said, the working group on post 2015, and it's about 60 organizations in Brazil that have been constantly having a dialogue with the government, but we know that we need to expand it. It's such a big country, we need to get a lot more people involved. And we need to facilitate that process as well. Since we've been following the SDGs and the FFD in that process, we need to bring our fellow organizations up to speed in that. And this is one of the biggest challenges in a country that is continental size. That's pretty much our challenge and at the same time the opportunity. Because if we are able to do that, if we are able to actually advocate, put a communication process and campaigning process together, we can really become a very strong partner in the process of implementation of the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing the voices of those from Latin America and also Caribbean. Having said that, I will not summarize what you said. I just want to invite Mr. Dani, the Secretary General of Civicus, to also share his experience. We all know the convening power of Civicus.
Thanks, Ibrahim. Good morning after everyone. So it was about 5 or 6 months ago when we were thinking about what we should do this week at the end of the SDG Summit. And I think I emailed Betsy and said, can we please book the room? She said, when? And I said, well, when would be the morning after? And we worked out it would be today. This moment would be the morning after the SDG Summit. So thank you to Betsy and colleagues at OSF for allowing us to use this room. It does feel a bit like a morning after, and it made me think of when I was a young man and still dating. I hope my wife's not going to watch this bit. And it feels a little bit like the SDGs are an attractive person that you've been flirting with for a while. You know, I first met her at a party at the Rio Plus 20 where I heard about her.
It's better that we turn off the live stream right
now. We heard about her at the Rio Plus 20. We've been seeing her at various parties lately, at the GCAP party here and there, the Beyond 2015 parties, the Action 2015 parties. We were really getting together a lot. And then for the last few months, we've been locked in rooms down the road in the UN together, very intensely getting to know each other, all of our shapes and contours, all 17 curves. And finally, this weekend, we consummated the relationship. And the problem, of course, is that the other side, let's say, people representing the governments, if any of you were listening over the weekend about to this SDG Summit, they're really happy. I mean, it was leader after leader, self-congratulations after self-congratulations about how wonderful the SDGs really are. So she's loving it. But this morning, I'm feeling a little bit unsure. I don't know about you guys, because it has been an intense process. We have been involved. It's been the longest courtship of this sort that the intergovernmental process has ever seen. And we do see a lot that's attractive in them. Where almost every agenda that we fought for is there. But then we know that we've heard promises like this before. We met the MDGs. In fact, we didn't even really meet the MDGs, they were thrust upon us. But this time around, to contribute, there's a contrast between the hype that the governments are talking about the SDGs and the anxieties many of us are feeling and the hangovers that we might have. And so I think this is a moment for us, especially those of us in the room who spend so much time on this agenda, to think critically and to think boldly about what we do next. Because my feeling, my sort of Trump feeling that beats all other feelings I'm feeling today is actually guilty. Because we have spent, at Civicus, for example, because we're an active participant in all of these different initiatives, we've spent huge amounts of valuable time and money and energy and emotion on this agenda. We've burned carbon like crazy, flying from consultation or insultation to insultation. We have put a lot of effort into it. We've used a lot of public money to get us here, and I'm sure many of you and your organizations have. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, has it been worth it? Will it be worth it? If you ask that question, I think it raised, for me anyway, and from Civicus' point of view, there are two questions that we have to answer. First is, what can we in civil society do on the SDG agenda? I'm going to shift Ibrahim's CEO a little bit to AIM. We need to take aim at the SDGs. We need to build awareness, we need to help in their implementation, and we need to get serious about monitoring. I think one of my frustrations with the MDGs was that so few people knew, beyond development geeks like us, about what an MDG was. On this agenda, if these are truly going to be the people's goals or the people's agenda, then it's going to be our responsibility to get them out into communities. Not because it's a popularity contest for the United Nations, but actually because these should be tools in everybody's toolbox to demand accountability from power holders. But these aren't some abstract goals agreed to by diplomats, but these should be powerful tools in everyone's accountability toolbox. The implementation agenda is clear. You know, a lot of us have spent the last few years campaigning. Let's get our agenda in. I think we now have to shift and be much more sophisticated and think about what is our role in the implementation of this agenda. Because it's no longer, we can't, you know, the last people you would trust to implement the SDGs, frankly, are member states. They need to be there, but they alone are not going to deliver this agenda. We're going to go out there and say, show them how to do gender equality better, show them how to do social inclusion. If they really do mean leave no one behind, who's going to push them on that? It'll be us in civil society. And the M stands for monitoring. I think, you know, if you think about how we did on MDG monitoring, we did okay. Most of the literature and issues that I've been reviewing actually are rather staid. You know, they often rely on government data, which is outdated or patchy or just wrong, to tell us about what was happening on the MDG agenda. Well, this time around, I think we have a responsibility in civil society to do that monitoring more effectively, to use new technologies and tools to our advantage, to shift the power of data and information back to our hands, back to citizens' hands. So I think in terms of what we can do for the SDGs, I think it's all around awareness, implementation, and monitoring. But the more interesting and tricky question, and the more politically sensitive question, which I think all of our speakers have touched on, is what can the SDGs do for us in civil society? And here are a few reflections to hopefully stimulate these discussions. I think this agenda provides us in civil society an opportunity to create or build the sorts of civil society networks that we've always wanted to create, but have rarely been able to. This is an opportunity to create mechanisms or instruments or coalitions, whatever you want, movements, whatever you want to call them, that are bold, that aren't just driven by a donor agenda, that aren't short-termist, that are visionary about what we believe in and what we want to achieve. But our starting point is not an administrative convenience, but rather is built on a bold, radical vision of where we want the world to be in 2030. I think as we've heard eloquently from John Patrick and others, this is an opportunity to redraw the civil society landscape, to say, what does civil society look like? What should civil society itself look like in 2030? Well, I would argue we would hopefully have much more meaningful relationships between all of us across our issues that we work on, across the big international NGOs to the small community organizations and the informal social movements. That we have the solidarity across all of those actors who start in this relationship not from what can I get out of this initiative, but instead, what can I give in to this initiative? What can World Vision, an organization with $2.4 billion turnover and 45,000 staff, give to civil society? What can Ibrahim and his colleagues in the African Youth Panel give to this initiative through their creativity and their energy? What can all of us do together rather than what can this thing do for us, I think is an important thing. I think we need to exemplify, for example, the universal agenda. Again, I doubt very much that member states are going to rapidly break the mold and stop talking about development as if it was about charity and aid and start talking about a universal agenda, but we can. We can go back to our own communities, regardless of where we live in the world, and say this is a universal agenda, and we can start acting as if we mean it and behaving like that. So there are a whole range of opportunities, I think, to think differently about how we work together, how we organize and mobilize in civil society. And most of us might feel a little bit anxious and guilty about what we've just committed ourselves to over the weekend. But in many ways, this is, I think, an opportunity for us to revolutionize the way that we work together. Over the last few months, we've been part of, or most of us, or many of us have been part of all sorts of conversations in Tunis, in Addis, here in New York, about the contours of what's going to happen. And I think we've found ourselves an amazingly able and diverse transitional steering group who's going to help us come up with some options for how we do that. But I really urge us all to think about how we make the most of this opportunity, not just so that we realize the vision of the SDGs, but so that we reshape the way that we work together in civil society itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Danny, and thank you so much to all the panelists for such important and brilliant presentations and sharing of experience, inspirations, and you have really put forward a lot of ideas where we can and most build on. I would say there is no honeymoon here for us. I mean, we may have married the SDGs, but there is no honeymoon for us. And I would say also that if the SDGs were to be compared with a woman, I would rather be referred to as intelligent, smart, and wise rather than attractive. We are attractive, but more than that, we are intelligent and smart. So thank you so much for that. We are running out of time, and we have gone beyond the time that we had agreed on this panel. But we do want to open up the floor to listen to some of the questions and comments and contributions that you may have. So Ibrahim and I are going to see. Maybe we can have 3 hands first, and then go back to the panel, and then go back to 3. So I'm going to choose a man and a woman. How about that? So let's go with the woman first, Tanya. Sorry, Oli, you're coming second.
Yeah, please use the mic.
It's just a reflection on hearing people talking over the past few days, and a slight nervousness, if I may. I think we need to change our language enormously. I completely agree with everybody who said so. And my tendency is to say that we might need to move away from the term development and developing altogether. I'm not absolutely sure that this is very helpful to keep using this term, because certain people, almost anybody outside of this group, has a certain understanding of the term development and developing. And we really need to change the discourse now, because I think it's going to be much harder for us to change other people's understanding of the term development and developing than it is just to use a different word, and to use a word that's much more appropriate. I'm not sure we're there yet necessarily on what that word should be, because sustainable development is a bit sort of geeky, but let's work on it and have all these communications folk helping us. Because I agree we need to marry up comms to make it much more understandable to the ordinary person, together with the advocacy folk like me. But let's please all try to think a little bit differently and make sure that whatever we say represents what we really want going forward, just to be aware. Thanks.
So, can you please introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Tanya. I work for Plan International, and I've been the co-chair of the Beyond 2015 Europe Group for the last 4 years.
Thanks. Ingo?
Hello, I'm Ingo Ritz from the GCAP Global Secretariat. So I have 2 points. So one is about, I think it's really great that so many people are here, and this shows interest, and it's a great opportunity. I think we really should use this, as we have seen in the Action 2015 presentation, to bring many people on board and many different movements, since the SDGs are also very broad. For example, in Europe, we are working on SDG Watch Europe. So we are working with women's groups, with environmental groups, with all kind of also social groups working in Europe. So I think that is one of the challenges, that we really bring those movements on board, and very soon, that there's a broad ownership. So it would be too late if it's in 5-6 months. So they should be there at the beginning. And then we can really create something great and big. So one important point is to also how we position ourselves. So we have seen the SDGs made progress. There are good points, but there are also many weak points. So one important question will be how we interpret and how civil society will position itself. So I think we need to ask very tough questions. We need to have a critical perspective. And if we do this, then it will be much easier also to bring these other civil society groups on board. So in the last point, we need to build this from the national level and regional level. So the global level is very important, but the main level of implementation will be the national level.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Deborah. I'm from a organization called Engajando Mundo in Brazil. And I have a very punctual question, because as Danny so smartly pointed out, there are a lot of processes coming up to this point. And it's a very important moment for civil society worldwide, around the world today, this week. And so my question is, in a couple of months, we have the COP21, the new climate agreement and all this stuff, and another like high point for civil society. And how what should be our strategy as civil society so as these two agendas don't interfere in each other? I mean, like, that's it. How do we make those two agendas not collide, you know, like in our relationship with the government? Thanks.
And the last speaker. Before we go to the panel, come back here for so long.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm quite struck by the comments from this gentleman over here. My name is Michael Shuchuk, and I'm with the Global Center for Human Change. I'm quite struck by the comments of this gentleman here, Patrick, the grantee. I think this is exactly right. It's the model of development in our minds that needs to change. We're talking about very complex challenges here, very significant challenges, and they're very, very difficult to even see, let alone come up with a way to address them. I was speaking with Jeffrey Sachs on the weekend. He was at the UN talking about the Sustainable Development on ending hunger and about how difficult it is to even see this challenge, let alone the way to address it. And I spoke with him afterwards and I said, there's something in common with each one of the problems underlying every one of these Sustainable Development Goals. We created them. It's our level of thinking about ourselves, each other, and the planet. So I think this is precisely the point, is that it's our minds that need to change. I think the point was made that we need to exemplify the universal agenda. These metaphors are really useful, and there's this talk about the need to design a menu. We are the design. It is the human that is the design. We are the menu. We are the ones that can change. It is our level of thinking that needs to change. These significant challenges that we face cannot be solved at the level of thinking that created them. So my question is, what is the work of these panel members? What is the work of these organizations? What is it that we're doing in order to change the level of our thinking? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We had initially thought that we would have more time for question and answer. Hopefully for the breakout groups, we will have an opportunity to exchange much more and in much more detail. For now, I just would like to give 1 minute back to each of our panelists, and then we are going to move on to the next session where we are also hoping to have a Q&A moment. To you, let's start here. 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to actually bring the points that he made about hunger, which is quite interesting and tying to what John Patrick also talked about, which is policy change. So, for instance, to end hunger, like we know that we produce enough food in the world to feed the whole world. We just have a very strict and complex distribution process that actually keeps hunger existing in many ways. And that depends a lot on policy. So definitely change on policy, advocating for that. And what are we doing to change our mindset? I don't know, as civil society, as civil society, we are the agents of that change, in a sense. It's quite amazing because in 20 years, for some people, we have been talking about the same things over and over again. It's taking a very long time for that message to reach the powers that be. So in a sense, I don't know if it's for us civil society, we need to really completely change our mindset or actually change our strategy to expand and communicate better the mindset that we have developed throughout that process and actually influence the changes.
Thank you. Moving on quickly because we are really pressed for time. Leo.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess I'll be super short and practical. So it's maybe to touch on the issue of trying to bring all movements on board right from the beginning. I think there might just be a difference of opinion. I think, as I said at the start, for me, there's a big question about the balance between leadership and participation. I think when you're setting up a global campaign, when you're setting up some kind of global working, there's certain elements that you can influence easily and that you can't. And it's difficult to bring those that you can't bring easily to the table. You can try to spend your whole time trying to bring every single person around the table, but I guess I would feel that there's a risk of not having any movement, not having any leadership if you spend your whole time just trying to bring every single group around the table. So I think I would just go back to the idea that there's a fine balance to be found at this stage between participation and leadership.
Chantal?
Thank you. I think in response to the question about how do we respond to the climate change agenda, it is, I said, as Danny had indicated, is that we are in a moment when we can redefine how we work together and support each other and make sure that we don't fall into the trap of looking at the agenda in a fragmented way, but that we understand the coherence. So that I think that we do have a possibility to make sure that we understand and appreciate that coherent strand as we saw it, FFB, SDGs, and also not in terms of climate change, and then be able to present that kind of coherent voice to policymakers so that we don't allow them as well to separate us, but rather strengthen the coherence.
We learned a great lesson from Addis Ababa. This country, United States, said no to technology transfer. They say they preferred it to remain a voluntary thing. Britain and OECD countries said no to the intergovernmental body from taxation. They would rather discuss 0.7%. Look, this is not the way to go. We can't go on. There is too much frustration among the young people, In Africa, the African Working Group has decided to engage the African Union in the kitchen. We are engaging the African Union to stop receiving, because at the point we think governments from the North are treating our government sometimes the way civil society in the North treats civil society in Africa. Receiving head, never in the kitchen. This is where we are inviting. And we on our side have resolved to begin to work closely with our various governments. And we're inviting our partners in the sincerity of purpose to join us in this trouble. That designing the menu for us should be stopped in the spirit of SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you. Just first of all, an apology that slightly sexist metaphor caused offense. I was struggling this morning to work out a way of describing how I felt in the last few months, years. I think that the most important mindset, in addition, another important mindset in addition to the one that I think we've heard about in terms of integrating climate, being universal, thinking not about aid and development, but about a broader social justice agenda. The other shift, I think, is around how we in civil society behave on this agenda. Most of us, I suspect, in this room are feeling that this is not necessarily, as positive an agenda as we might have hoped. So we have, broadly speaking, two simple options. We can continue to complain that this is not a good enough option, good enough document, it's not good enough, we wish there was this or that. Or we pretend what we wanted is in there, and we hold governments to account in any case. And to me, I think we have a strategic choice, and I would urge us to think about the latter. This document is here, the SDGs are here for at least the next 15 years, and I think our opportunity is to say all of those things that we and our organizations believe in are there, and we use this, again, as an extra tool in our accountability drive. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've been monitoring also Twitter. It's great to see so much engagement. So far, I haven't identified any question, but if anyone do, please bring it to the attention of the facilitators here. Without much,
say is that we have now an overflow room.
Oh, great, fantastic.
Civil society, yeah, because there are quite a lot of people that arrive later than
okay, so they are watching this live stream.
And they're going to join us for the group discussions.
Perfect. So welcome to all the colleagues who are in the overflow room. Even though in a separate room, we are all here together. So without much ado, and noting that we are 25 minutes behind in the program, we would like to thank very much our panelists and call on our colleagues who are. Our colleagues who will be leading on the next session, Emily Duraga from Piango and Magda Toma from IFP. So over to you, my friends.
There's a chair here for
Colleagues, Magda and I are part of the transitional steering group, which we will introduce later. But for now, we're going to try to communicate the first thoughts that have come through in terms of, so what now? It's all been about September 2015. And as has been said, we are in that moment. And the question is, what after September 2015? And a couple of questions have been posed. What is our role as civil society? How do we position ourselves? And this morning is absolutely about giving our thoughts, continuing the conversation, giving some form and shape to how we want to go. So it's part of the architecture. And those of us who have had some time to think about this, it's not all set in stone. We're just trying to put some thoughts out there. And the purpose of this morning is to give it shape. And we want to hear from you about that.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So what happened until now in terms of civil society gathering and working on the implementation and follow-up of the new agenda? So informal conversations started a couple of months ago in last November, in the sidelines of a Beyond 2015 meeting. And a small group of people started thinking about the morning after. And they convened others to join them for the discussions. Several informal meetings took place in Tunis, in Addis Ababa, in New York, but also online via Google Group or email exchanges. Many of you attended those discussions, and many of you are new to this, so we are very happy to welcome you. We are also very happy to learn that there's an overflow room now, because we had 500 people interested in attending this meeting, and it was such a pity that we only have a small room. But luckily, we have even more people now attending. So the discussions took place around what is the civil society's role on this follow-up and implementation of the new agenda, how to do it, which is the best way to coordinate, should we start at national level, at regional level, international level. And today we are here to present you the results of those conversations and also to invite you to join them, to enrich them, to change them if you think they should be changed, and to work together in order to make sure that the world we want will happen before even 2030. The discussions took place, as I said, informally, online, but also via working groups. We had the working group working on governance, another one on outreach and membership, and another one on so governance, outreach and membership, and communication and personal activities. Today, we have reached a point where we have transitional steering group who will discuss a little bit more in detail about that. I mean, you will present to the members. It's as I said, an informal group that should provide guidance and leadership in this transitional phase. Many of the members are here. We will have the chance to interact with them during our breakout groups and also the informal discussions. So please join us for the discussions, join the online discussion, but also all the meetings that we are going to organize from now.
So, I think we're calling it the initiative. We haven't quite named it, so it's like about to give birth to a child, start thinking of the name. And the vision, and I have to say the transitional, we started calling ourselves, we were named the Transitional Leadership Group. We had a discussion and felt slightly uncomfortable with the word leadership, because leadership comes from all corners. And so we renamed ourselves Leadership Steering Group. And so the Transitional Steering Group.
It's very new.
Right, So we're all in this together, still feeling, cozy with what it is. So the Transitional Steering Group came up with this draft vision statement. We did feel we need to have a vision statement, a statement of where we're heading to, a world where Agenda 2030 is delivered. We thought that the word delivered was more pragmatic than implemented. Inform, I think the questions about inform, with equal and inclusive participation of all people, and where people are empowered to hold leaders at all levels accountable for fulfilling the commitment. You're going to have the opportunity in the breakout sessions to make some comments, so we won't go too much into that now. And the objectives have been developed, spoken about, written about, and the proposed objectives to this moment are: 1, implementation and accountability; promote actions to ensure the full and accountable implementation of Agenda 2030 at all levels, local, national, regional, and global; participation and inclusion, second objective: ensure, strengthen, and support meaningful participation of the people, especially those living in poverty and marginalization. I think some of those phrases probably could change to volunteers and civil society in the accountable implementation of Agenda 2030 at all levels. The third objective, global initiative, building a global initiative focused on accountable and inclusive implementation of Agenda 2030 with inclusive and participatory processes with balanced leadership from the global south and north representing all regions.
So what about the activities? What kind of activities we implement together within this global initiative that would have, of course, national, regional, and international levels. So we have identified 4 focus areas, and we have some ideas of activities that could we implement. The transitional group needs to work more on that, and hopefully we'll also have working groups on all of the areas to help us find priorities and start the concrete work. So the 4 priority areas are awareness raising and popular mobilization, and it's about popularizing and inspiring global, regional, and national actions, and also sharing information, messages between actors and helping them mobilize together. The second area is joint advocacy. It's identifying common policy shifts at all levels and supporting national, regional, and international levels in doing common advocacy activities in order to hold governments accountable for the implementation of the agenda. But it's also working on the financing and the resources we need and doing advocacy in order to make sure that all the resources are available to do the actual work. The third focus area is monitoring and accountability, of course, varying with the other areas. But we really need to make sure that civil society and citizens are participating in the monitoring and the accountability processes. And we also aim to strengthen people's capacities in doing that kind of work. And indeed, we also need to develop at international level, but in collaboration with everybody, the tools that would be available to civil society to do this monitoring and accountability. And the fourth area is, of course, strengthening the capacity within civil society and sharing information. It's also fostering exchanges between civil society actors, facilitating learning from each other, exchanging tools, best practices, and providing a kind of international platform of exchanges where people can gather from different organizations, different countries, in order to make sure that they are in touch and they are learning from each other and also supporting each other.
So could I ask the transitional steering group to just come forward so that we can see their faces and know who they are? John Patrick has just excused himself because he's gone to join the African Union. Chantal, could you come back up here so that those in the overflow room can also see your face? Alexandra is not here. Yeah, you, Abong? Well, we'll get you to represent Abong. Yeah. Please just keep standing at the front. Aurelis, yes, please stand at the front. Because you're going to be held accountable from here on. We can't just tell governments, we've got to be accountable as well. Abraham, yes, and myself, Emile, Beauty Turana. Philip, yes, we have Philip again. Victoria has had to catch a plane, I understand.
Yes.
Andrew Griffins. Okay, so we see some old hands helping us. Magda is here. Ollie waving his hand. Ollie, please come up front here because we're the
Not only wave, Ollie, come on.
You might think you're famous, but you're not. We're starting all over again. And Sarah, where are you? Can International. Okay, let's give ourselves a very big hand. Everybody give us a hand. So as I've said earlier, this is the steering group. So we see ourselves as very much steering the way forward. And so in terms of yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, all right. Okay, you can sit down now.
Thank you.
All right, so that's basically it. We did discuss a sense of where we're heading to. The idea is...
So also Becky Millet.
Oh,
who's
right.
also in Marine. Right, I think.
Becky?
Who's Becky?
Okay, so the idea is now to throw it into the breakout groups, but we did discuss that this transition and how long is transition, and I think Leo kind of talked about the tension between, trying to be as inclusive as possible, but at the same time there needs to be some leadership going forward. And we have had some discussion about steps forward, but we would really like to hear from yourselves. The idea is by middle of next year, there will be firm structures in place and very clear ways forward. But today was also going to be about you sharing with us what are your responses to the vision, the objectives, and also beginning to give some meat to some of the thoughts that we've shared with you. There's also discussion, and we are having another face-to-face meeting tomorrow morning, which is why we're not saying too much, because we just started a conversation and then had to continue it later. But the idea is that there will be nominations, there will be elections, and when I'm saying by the middle of next year, it should all firm up, that would include the process for a more permanent, if you like, or who would be the leadership going forward and what the structure would look like. So really, the architecture is today going forward, and the steering group would take that until we have come up with the more permanent structure.
So please get involved, please get in touch. We are still working on the membership criteria. We also have a very interesting discussion about the outreach and inclusion. We already had some interventions earlier about that. So the group is taking this forward, but for the moment, if you want to join, please do it on the website and also via email. We are also, all the members of the transitional steering group are available to give you more information about the discussions ongoing regarding our mandate or regarding the next activities. but please speak with with your colleagues, come and ask questions. It's important to make this initiative well known, and also it's important to try to shape it from now, because we are still at the beginning. The transitional group has more or less 1 month. We are still forming this group, and we are trying to see how to best put things forward and continue to work and come up with concrete proposals that will be discussed, of course, by the working groups, because the working groups should have a huge role in this new initiative. But please join us, please come and speak with us, and we are very happy to have you ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily and Magda. Moving forward, we will have the breakout sessions. And just before doing that, I just would like you to know that our colleagues here have emphasized that this is a transitional group that has been coordinating over the last month. All of us have been in the conversation since last year. Everything that is being put forward to you is like zero draft. You're all familiar with that term now. So it's like zero draft, nothing has been agreed. What we are doing is the work to prepare, to present to you proposals on how to structure this initiative going forward. So without much ado, I would like to call on Sarah Stark from Plan International, who is going to be leading on the next session of the breakout groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Hello everyone. I'm Sarah from Plan International, and yeah, you've heard a lot about many different things, some of the learnings that we've had and the different initiatives that were implemented over the last years or so, and we really want to make this more interactive and hear from you now, which is why we're going to have a group discussion session. Unfortunately, it's not going to be very, very long, so we're going to try to make the most of it. But as you've seen, everything is still very, very broad. It's a very open discussion. We're still at the beginning of this discussion. I think one thing that we all can agree on is that we really, really want this agenda to deliver for the people. And but there's lots of open questions still. It's a very broad set of objectives and very kind of overarching activities that have been presented so far. So we're really, really keen on hearing from all of you about what this initiative can really bring to you, how it can be most useful, where it can add most value. So these kind of questions, like what we've heard this morning, what do we really want to do with this initiative? What are the gaps that we will be, we'll have to fill? What can we give to this initiative? And trying to get a little bit more specific about these kinds of things will really help us focus the conversation. It's not as we said before, it's not a time to make any decisions, but it's really important for us to try and really analyze what the added value of this can be. And again, there will be complex questions as to the articulation between national level and international level. Who do we want to challenge? How are we going to do this? How are we going to best cooperate in this effort, etc. So not going to talk too much more because we're running way behind time. But what we would like to do is that we divide this plenary into 5 groups. And we're going to talk in those groups for about half an hour. And I know it's very, very little time, but we've got skilled facilitators who hopefully will try and make the best of this discussion. I would urge everyone to not necessarily go through a round of introductions, because that would probably take up a half hour. So yeah, and then really try and identify in this very short time some of the things where you think we could really help take this initiative forward, fill some of the gaps. How can success look like, or how should it look like, and how can we help get us there? So 5 groups, as I said, and I understand there is a little bit of a logistical change this morning, so we'll have to huddle in this room mostly. 4 of the groups will be in this room, there will be 1 group in another room. I'll tell you which are the themes. They're also in the program that we've sent to you, and then I just would like to have a quick show of hands of who wants to join which group. So the first group is going to be about the dimension of regional advocacy, mobilization, and awareness raising. So what can we do at the regional level? What will add value at the regional level? It will be facilitated by Emily. Can I ask you to stand up again? Yeah. And yes, the next group, the second group, is going to be about the national level. We've heard about the shift to the national level. So it's going to be, of course, a very important component. We've heard about the need to really shape this from the bottom up and really including all the relevant actors at the national level. Lots of open questions there. How can we most effectively do that? So a second group about the national level advocacy, mobilization, and public awareness is going to be facilitated by Ben from Bond, who's over there. A third group about influencing the UN process, advocacy and mobilization. So really talking about what are we going to do in the following steps in the UN space. Yara, there you go. Can you stand up now? Okay. Fourth group, and again, we really want to bring lots of groups on board in this initiative, have discussions, really build it as a very inclusive initiative from the start. So outreach to wider civil society, facilitated by Chantal, where is Chantal there? And the last one is around the monitoring and accountability piece, which we all know is going to be extremely important in the implementation of this agenda, and will be facilitated by Philip, just right here in front. So again, regional advocacy, national level, influencing the UN process, outreach to wider civil society, monitoring and accountability. Take 2 seconds to think about which group you would like to join, please. And if I could quickly have a show of hands, just because we need to know. There's one other room, and we need to know which group can go to this other room. It's just a logistical question. So, who would like to join the regional level group discussion? Okay. Okay, thank you. The national level. Okay. Influencing the UN process. That's really equally. Outreach to wider civil society. Okay, perfect. And monitoring and accountability. All right, that's.
It
could be.
Like always, they say numbers.
Then I'm going to actually choose the national level to go to the other room, please. So that would be you, Ben. And Hannah, can you then show us the room here? So, and just before you go to your respective facilitators, and the 4 other groups will be in each corner. So the regional advocacy with Emily will be in that corner. The influencing the UN process will be here with Yara. Outreach to wider civil society goes to the door where you came in, and monitoring and accountability in the far right corner. Yeah, and you have 30 minutes, please, and then everyone come back to plenary. And for those who are with us on the live stream, we'll have to stop the live stream, unfortunately, but we'll bring you back in half an hour. Sarah.